What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Kenny Kinetics, where learning is made easy. Let's go! The purpose of this video today is to talk about the coronary circulation of the heart. So that's the arteries and the veins of the heart. So again, nothing crazy. Everything's going to be basic. But here at Kenny Kinetics, if you rock with me through this journey, we're going to start off at the basic level. And we're just, again, going to keep adding layers upon layers upon layers so that you know a lot about the heart by the time that we are done with this playlist. So let's go. Let's get it. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the arteries of the heart. So the heart itself has its own circulation through the coronary arteries. The purpose of the coronary arteries is to bring all of that oxygenated blood and all the nutrients from the aorta directly to the heart, because the heart itself is a muscle, and within the myocardium, that's where the muscle is. So that means that the heart needs its own nutrients to be able to pump blood throughout the body as well. So as you see here, this is the aorta, and there are two main arteries that branch off from the aorta. There's the right coronary artery, which you see coming through right here, and then there's the left coronary artery, which you see that branches through here. So the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery, they both flow through something called the coronary sulcus. Alright, so we're just going to start off with the right one. And again, the right coronary artery branches off of the aorta here. It flows through the right coronary sulcus, and then it gives different branches. So the two branches that I'm going to talk about isn't depicted here, but we're going to talk about these two structures in my next video, talking about the cardiac conduction of the heart. But from the right coronary artery, it gives a branch off to the SA node, which is located right around here under where the superior vena cava is, like right around here where this circle is. So that supplies blood flow to the SA node, and again, we're going to talk about cardiac conduction in the next video, so just hold on tight to that thought right there. Another branch that it gives off, it comes here and it comes to the margin of the heart, as you can see here. So this artery right here is called the right marginal artery. And the right marginal artery here supplies the right ventricle. And you can kind of see too in this picture, because right now we're looking at the anterior view of the heart. And this right here is the right atrium. This is the right ventricle. This is the left ventricle. And then this is the left atrium. So as you see the right coronary artery coming off to the right side, it's going to make sense that the right coronary artery is going to supply the right atrium, the right ventricle, the SA node, which I said is right around up here, and then there's another node called the AV node, which would be probably like right around here. And again, just hold on to that thought, and we're going to cover that in our next video. But the main two things that I want to focus on is the right marginal artery. On the back of the heart, the right coronary artery also has a branch that comes around, and then it comes down the middle right here. And then this artery is called the posterior interventricular artery. And this artery supplies both the posterior aspect of the left ventricle and the right ventricle. So again, the right coronary artery, it'll come around the back of the heart, and then it gives off this branch to the posterior interventricular artery, which flows down the posterior interventricular sulcus here. And it gives blood flow to the left ventricle here and the right ventricle over here. Now within the heart, there's something called dominance. And the dominance of the heart is determined by which branch of the coronary artery gives rise to the posterior interventricular artery. So I'm going to go back up to the anterior view, but in most people, 60 to 80% of people, the posterior interventricular artery here supplies the posterior walls of the right and left ventricle. So if it comes off of the right artery, that's right coronary artery, that's known as right heart dominance. But in about like 10 to 15% of people, it can come off of the left coronary artery. And if it branches off of the left coronary artery, then it's called a left dominant heart. But then in a rare amount of people, you have it coming from both the right and the left coronary artery, so that's called codominance. And that's basically important because when you have a lack of, say if you have a blockage in the artery and it decreases the amount of blood flow that you're getting to that area, some of these arteries can pick up on the lack of oxygen getting to that area and compensate for it. But if it comes to a point where the blockage is too big and it can no longer compensate, this can lead to a myocardial infarction, which is another word for that is a heart attack. And that basically means that that area of the heart is no longer receiving the oxygen that it needs, so that part is basically getting starved, and it's fiending for that oxygen and the nutrients and it's not getting it. So then that's when people start to experience pain, which we'll again talk about myocardial infarctions in a later video once we cover all the basic anatomy of the heart. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about the left coronary artery. And again, the left coronary artery here comes off of the aorta. The left coronary artery comes off of the aorta here, and then it branches into two main arteries. The first main artery that it branches into is called the left anterior descending artery, and this is this artery coming down right here. So the left anterior descending artery supplies blood to the anterior portion of the interventricular septum, which is consisting of the left ventricle and the right ventricle. Again, which makes sense because if you see this artery, it's coursing down here on the anterior side. You can imagine that the interventricular sulcus is right around here. So it's going to give blood to the left ventricle and the right ventricle on the anterior portion of it. Then there's another artery that kind of wraps around here, and we can go ahead and view this artery in the posterior view of the heart. Coming down right here. So the next artery that comes off of the left coronary artery is the left circumflex artery, and that artery is located right here in the red. The left circumflex artery gives blood flow to the left atrium of the heart. So again, here you have the left coronary artery, which is over here, and then the left anterior descending artery, which is called the LAD. It also has another word that people call this, and it's called the left anterior interventricular branch here, but I'm going to refer to it as the left anterior descending artery. So the left anterior descending artery, again, it supplies the anterior 2/3 of the interventricular septum. And again, when we're talking about dominance of the heart, if the posterior interventricular artery arises from the left coronary artery, then within these people, it roughly supplies the SA node in about 40% of people, and it also will supply the AV bundled branches and the Purkinje fibers. Again, these are all cardiac conduction. These are all cardiac conduction fibers, and we're going to talk about that in my next video, talking about the cardiac conduction of the heart. Alright, so just as a recap again to summarize, we're going to go over the arteries before we move on to the veins. So the right coronary artery branches off of the aorta, and it gives branches to the SA node, the AV node, and 60 to 80% of people. And then this artery on the margin of the heart is called the right marginal artery, which supplies the right ventricle. And then on the back side of the heart, you have the posterior interventricular artery here, which supplies the posterior walls of the left and the right ventricle, as you can see right here. And again, the left coronary artery comes off of the aorta here. It gives rise to two main branches. The first one is the left anterior descending artery, aka the left anterior interventricular branch, and it supplies blood to the anterior 2/3 of the right and the left ventricle. And then it wraps around the heart and it comes on the back side of the left side. And as it wraps around the backside of the heart, down here, this red right here is the left circumflex artery here, and it supplies blood flow to the left atrium, which is right here. Alright, so the last thing that I'm going to talk about here are the veins of the heart. So the veins, the good thing about the veins of the heart, they basically follow the arteries and then they drain that portion of the artery that it follows. So the great cardiac vein here follows the left anterior descending artery. So this vein basically drains the left ventricle and the left atrium, because the left coronary artery, again, it gives rise to that left circumflex artery here and the left anterior descending artery. So the great cardiac vein kind of comes from the bottom of the interventricular sulcus and it comes up here, wraps around to the back, which I'll show the posterior view in a second, and then it joins in with the coronary sulcus, and then the coronary sulcus goes and drains the deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. The small cardiac vein follows the right marginal artery over here. So again, it'll go to the back of the heart, which I'll show you in a second, and this basically drains deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle. The last of the veins that we have is the middle cardiac vein, and just like the great cardiac vein and how it followed the left anterior descending artery, the middle cardiac vein follows the posterior descending artery on the back of the heart. So it drains blood from the right ventricle and the left ventricle, because the posterior interventricular artery supplies blood to the posterior 2/3 of the right and the left ventricle. So it'll take all of that deoxygenated blood and it'll bring it up, and then as you see here, this is the coronary sinus. So the great cardiac vein, the small cardiac vein, and the middle cardiac vein, they all join into the coronary sulcus, and then as you can see here, the coronary sulcus will run, and then it'll bring all that deoxygenated blood back from the heart to the right atrium. And then that's how the heart gets all of its deoxygenated blood back into the heart, so that it can pump through the right atrium, through the right ventricle, to the pulmonary trunk, go through the pulmonary circulation, receive that oxygenated blood, and then boom, it's going to go into the aorta. It's going to split into the left coronary artery and the right coronary artery, and then that's how the myocardium of the heart again receives its oxygen, and then the cycle just continues on and on and on. Alright, so that was the review of the coronary circulation of the heart. Go ahead and give it a like and subscribe if you like this video. Drop some comments in the comment section. I'm really dedicated to your learning and trying to enhance and progress together so that we can understand these concepts. Make sure you are on the lookout for my next video when I talk about the cardiac conduction of the heart, and we're going to keep building upon the things that we learned in the previous videos. Thank you.